today and give you some insight into the German actions in Build Up Skills initiative. As you can see here, we have a lot of partners in this project from the logos over there, and we, the Research Institute for Vocational Education Training, are the partner responsible for the analytical part. So we do a lot of analysis in the project, and I give you some insight into the results and into the actions ahead of us. So one part is to have a look back to the first pillar, just to give you some insights. What is the point we are starting from? Then into the tasks ahead, and I have to focus one part because I can easily tell you 2 hours and more about our project. So I try to figure out what is the most interesting, or what are the questions which connect our two projects. And at last, I give some concepts for quality insurance on a regional level. That's not in the project, but there are a lot of activities around this project in Germany, and you can see how they are interlinked. So what were the beginnings? The beginnings were in the build-up skills the same as in Ireland. We had the 2020 goals in Europe, and the thinking, maybe the blue-collared workers are not qualified enough to fulfill all the tasks ahead. So in this first project we had to answer some questions. Which qualifications are needed? How many skilled workers are needed? And what is the situation like on the other hand? So how many workers are there, will be there in 2020? How are the qualification bundles anchored in the curricula? So not an easy task, because a lot of professions are involved, but we took this task and we analyzed as well where are the gaps, where are the barriers, and what has to be done in order to fill the tasks. So the second step had been the development of a national roadmap for Germany with broad support of all relevant actors. So to make it short for the quantitative part, because it's not that relevant for this second project, is that on the basis of a scenario that we have to invest more into the efficient energy and into refurbishment, we found out that 90,000 additional skilled blue-collar workers are needed, but on the other hand, there are enough, as a whole in Germany, on the job market, so that this is not a real problem till 2020. But this is, of course, only on the paper, because you can't give any fool the task to fix the gas pipes. If I were on the job market, you should prevent that I handle them, so that would be a little bit dangerous. So, of course, depending on the region, depending on the jobs, especially electricians, metal worker, installers and fitters, we have already shortage, or at least we can feel the coming shortage. So after 2020, we expect a nationwide shortage in skilled workers in that part. So that led to certain measures that have to be undertaken. I will come back to them later on. That was the quantitative part based on projection models provided by the Institute for Vocational and Education Training, the Federal Institute. So the other part of the analysis in the first project has been the analysis of the qualification bundles needed and the qualification bundles anchored in the present curricula. And the first thing we have to do was to set up an analytical grid for the qualitative questions, and we provided two dimensions for them. First dimension is the objects which are to be dealt with, the building envelope, the infrastructure and the energy supplied with their specific technologies which are important for our goals. And this I think Thomas just told about that. The interesting later on will be the linkages between these technologies or the professions involved in these technologies. But as we saw in the first project, there are also linkages between the trades within these technologies already. Yes? For instance, if you install solar heating systems, you probably are involved in dealing with the facade or with the roof and with the electricity or the pipes that have to be installed. There are different technologies involved or different parts of the building involved when installing such a system. So there are different linkages, and we already had some insights in the first project in some interfaces between the trades within each technology. So the first dimensions have been the technologies, the objects that have to be dealt with, and the second dimension for the analysis had been the process. So that's an idealistic process, of course. Not every process starts with advisory service planning, realization, approval, and then maintenance and repair. Sometimes it's rather maintenance and repair of the old building is the starting point in the best case that led to advisory service, not only to repair or do a little repair, but to advise for a more substantial refurbishment in that building. So that was the second dimension, and of course that's a little bit rough in that part. We had to refine this process in order to have the second dimension in an analytical grid. We had to refine the planning, for instance, in considering conditions, planning procedure, coordination with others involved. There you already see a hint that there must be a connection with others in this process. And I will leave it to that in refining it, just that you have a view that we had to do the analysis in a more depth than only in planning, realization, approval, and so on. We had to go deeper in the curricula and therefore formed such grid. That's still a rough one, but it shows what we have done. We took every curricula relevant. We had a lot of, maybe as an additional information, we have a lot of IVET curricula in German which are very detailed, which lead to a broad qualification in a certain field of profession, and so we can analyze them on the paper first. What are the objects are dealt with within this profession, and which are the exact procedures carried out by the person holding this profession. And we can do this for different level in that profession. That's first the initial education or the initial vocational training and education, and then the master craftsmanship as well. So what we found out in the first step when we is how is one occupation involved in different objects and in different processes within that object. So that was not the whole answer to the question what qualification bundles are needed and which qualification bundles are already covered by the occupations in our country. So we reorganized that information according to the technologies. The question then was what occupations are involved in one technology and how are they involved in the different processes for obtaining the technology in that building. So just for impression, we had again a grid, yes, and for every technology, for instance solar heating, we had such a table which shows the processes within that technology and lists all the professions involved with their contribution to the process as a whole. So and then comes the slide I just thought. of. That's just to see an impression. We covered all over our office wall with huge tables, and within that table, that's only one, or I think it's only a part of one technology, and there are a lot of professions enlisted, and the crosses mean they contribute to that process. So with these tables, we could see where are the gaps on one hand, and on the other hand, we can see that there are certain trades involved in certain steps only, and there are obviously interfaces between these trades, because one trade stops working for a certain period of time, the other comes to the building and continues the work. So that was one source later on. That's why I just referred to it a little bit in this presentation, though it's the first project. So what have been our results? First, necessary skills as a whole are well anchored in the curricula, especially in our apprenticeship or IVET curricula. There are certain processes, especially advisory, planning, coordination, which are left open. There are gaps in the IVET education, but they have been left open intentionally, because it's the task for the master craftsman in that job. But nevertheless, we got the impression that still, though there is a master craftsmanship, there could have been more linkage between the trades, or the improvement can be to get a more or better dovetailing of or better understanding of the other trades and their work to prevent damages, to prevent accidentally destroying the work of the others in the process of the work. So that's the one part which seemed to us to be a focus for the second project, to work on these interfaces between the trades. Moreover, that is systematically not completely different, but to some parts yes, is to regard the building as a whole system. If you come into a building as a blue-collar worker or as a planner, you have to have a view for the whole building and the interdependencies between the technologies in that building. And to our view, a lot of professions are very focused on their job and their technology they are dealing with, without caring too much for the other parts of the building. For instance, if someone installs a heating system, sometimes it's more efficient not to install a new heating system, but to take care of the building envelope first, because otherwise you have to build in completely a different heating system with lower capacity, for instance, because not this big heating system is needed anymore if you avoid losing all the energy out of the house. So these two parts, improving the dovetailing or the interfaces between the trades and the understanding of the building as an integrated system, are the focus points of two focus points of the second project that become evidently already there. What we've done in the first project as well was to analyze what are the CVET programs on the market, and we saw that there are a lot of programs there, but with a low number of participants, and they are not quite transparent for everyone on the market. There are many programs, very regional, locally, and they are not considered as something like a brand, which can be added to the career as a fixed point, for instance. So these are two barriers, or there are some barriers, that there is enough transparency on the one hand, and on the other hand, that there are enough incentives to go to this, that CVET programs on the other hand. Perhaps a minor problem is that there are several systems of early recognitions of qualification needed in the future for developing new CVET programs, but there are a lot of activities very separated for themselves and not dovetailed and leading to one strategy. These were the qualitative results from the first project, which led to certain tasks we had to do, and we agreed in that project with the relevant actors from the ministries, from the trade unions, from the chambers of crafts, from the guilds, and so on, that we have to do something, and fixed in the roadmap a total of 37 measures. We rated them, and the most important measures have been put into this build-up skills 2 project 2. And these measures aiming at overcoming quantitative gaps. There are a lot of measures which are put into the roadmap but not part of this project really, because they are done accompanying. So the image strategy of the craft sector, for instance, with TV spots and a whole batch of measures in the media is done without the support in this project, but it hopefully leads to an increase of attractiveness, an increase of awareness about the job variety in the craft sector, because this is really a problem among school leavers. They do not know the professions which are possible in the craft sector. Increase holding quota is something we tackle with some measurements also leading to overcoming barriers. That is to support the small and medium-sized enterprises within their personal work, in their development, human resource development work, which is quite an obstacle for them. Well, it's quite not a task registered as a strategic task for the entrepreneurs. So what we do is making workshops with them at the moment in order to find out what is the need from them, how we can support them in their work, in their development of their personnel. So overcoming qualitative gaps is another aim we want to tackle. Improving the understanding of interfaces between the trades and the house of the system has to be put down into concrete or specific courses, CVET programs, and of course we want to first analyze what are relevant programs already existing and how could they modify or put together into one system, because otherwise it would be very difficult to implement such a course if not implementing or regrouping all the actors involved in that CVET programs together in an agreement. So what is important as well is to ask how can transparency be installed, for instance by a platform, by a digital platform where all the courses are presented for entrepreneurs, for instance, but also for the advisory services at the chambers of crafts, which support the enterprises usually in finding relevant trainings for their employees. So we formed again project, Build Up Skills 2, with broad support from chambers of crafts, from the trade unions, from ministries, but as well as confederations, even from architects, from what do we have? Okay, well, even institutions which are responsible for financing refurbishments with the support of the state. So there are is a lot of support for our project, and in the middle you see the consortium, all the 6 from the first project plus ZWH that is responsible for specific course programs for training schemes in order to evaluate them together with the training institutions. So these are the work packages in our second project. I already talked about them a little bit when I talked about the tasks in our roadmap. There is the system of early recognition of future qualification needs that will be dealt with in 2015 when we try to bring together all the relevant institutions involved in those recognition systems in order to dovetail them a little bit more, in order to make it more efficient, in order to get early information about future needs in qualification in our system. Work package 3 and 4 deal with this interfaces between the trades and as well in the building as an integrated system. 3 is rather a bigger program, planned 200 hours maybe, which I come back on the next slide. Train the Trainer seminar is rather a short workshop in order to make trainers which are in the enterprises sensible for these topics, in order to support them with material which they can use within their apprenticeship with their apprentices in the enterprises or on the building site. The work package 5 is dealing with the support structures for lifelong qualification. That is specific work with small and medium-sized enterprises in order to ask them what are their needs, how the confederations and the chambers of crafts and the guilds can support them in their work to qualify their personnel. And moreover, there's a linkage to the 6th work package in order to improve the consulting services at the chambers and the institutions in connection with the database, with standards that are according to the needs of the users, in order to create more transparency over the existing CVET programs. This is a program as a whole, which we are dealing since last November, and one focus I want to present to you is the cross-trade CVET program. So that I learned from already the hour I'm here is that you are dealing with the same problems or the same parts. For us as curriculum experts rather than trade or technical experts, is important first to analyze what are the critical situation we want the personnel qualify for. Because we already found out there is a broad qualification already existing, but obviously there are still some problems. So we studied, beside our process analysis from the first project, we studied the studies on construction damages. So what are the faults or the existing faults on the building sites? We can learn from that there further qualification bundles are needed. Moreover, we we done some workshop with experts and interviews with experts from enterprises. What are their experiences? Where are the needs of qualification in the process? And we did a small survey among enterprises, what they regard as problems, especially considering the interfaces between the trades. What are the problems they face because other trades before them in the process had done something wrong in their part, not knowing enough about their work afterwards. So these are the this is the first step in our creation of a cross-trade CVET program or a modification of existing. We do not know yet because that depends on the institutions involved. We just started to sum up all the results from these different sources, and on the other branch of this analysis, we asked the institutions involved in CVET programs what are their specific programs, and what we will do is to compare what are the needs on the one hand with regards to the critical situations which we want to qualify for, and on the other hand what is the knowledge gained or to be developed in the existing CVET programs, and how is the is there a linkage between it? How can existing CVET programs cover it with a certain modification, perhaps, or is it to be to create a completely new CVET program? So what we have to do is to involve all the relevant institutions, and in Germany we have a clearly structured craft sector with the guilds and their representatives, and the craft sector with their representatives, and the institutions involved in the CVET programs at the chambers of craft, and so they have to be involved in the discussions from then on. So because we need their support that these courses are established and implemented, and that will be the next step starting in December, to figure out with them what are to select the from the insights we got from our analysis, what are the critical situations we want to focus on in the curricula to be created. Then we will accompany the curricular development, and then the ZWH will take over in the development of a teaching concept together with the institutions, and at last but not least testing and evaluation, and hopefully transfer through Germany from this CVET program. This is one, to my mind, very important part of our project now, to establish a CVET program, maybe with modules of existing CVET programs already, to install that CVET program that becomes a brand, that would solve another problem too, to have a clear career path within this craft sector from the initial vocational training and education to this CVET program, and then to the master afterwards, if we manage it to establish it between the IVET program and the master craftsmanship. And that was quite interesting in your presentations. From the workshop, I brought you some of the key issues addressed there as to be very important for such a CVET program, and it seems to me that are quite the same ones that you just presented here some minutes ago. Prevention of thermal bridges is a key issue, as well in the studies, where if there something went wrong on the buildings, and that's mostly involved with or connected with thermal bridges, damages of the roof and on the facade due to the installation of solar heat elements. Yes. When anchoring these elements, the roof is damaged and is not properly considered how to fix these damages. Interdependencies between building envelope and heating system, that clearly comes to a conflict of interest, of course. If the plumber goes to a building and he could sell a very expensive heating system, so first he had to think about what possibilities of improving the building envelope, and then of the possibilities of selling the heating system he had in mind before, because avoiding lacks of energy in the building becomes more important than only installing an efficient heating system. Airtightness, I have read it just a couple of minutes ago on your slide too. Smart building is maybe another part. That means the interconnection between the system in smart buildings, electricity, the window shutters electronically steered, so different parts of the building working intelligently with each other. So, and then there are the sixth one is maybe not that central, but mentioned several times: refurbishment of existing buildings. That is especially interesting for very old buildings, which cannot be altered completely because of the appearance in the old cities or something like that. So there have to be other solutions to fix their indoor insulation then. And the last one is more related to the advisory services. So that depending on how the buildings are used, the installed technologies or the insulations have to handled in a different way, and the customer need to be advised correctly in that part. What is not mentioned here but comes up several times too is that customers don't want to deal with a lot of craftsmen on their side. They want one partner. And so one question is also, is it possible that one takes over the coordinative function for all the others too? Especially when there is no architect. Usually when there is a new building, then there is an architect or something like that. But if there is refurbishment process, often there is no architect. Then the customer goes to one craftsman and or to an advisor, smart advisor, and he gives advice what to do in that building. But someone needs to coordinate the processes on that building site. And there's too the question: can the CVET-Program perhaps help to create the qualification as a coordinator between the trades there? That has to do something with the interfaces between the trades as well, but more in the process planning part. Last but not least, I want to give just an insight into some of the activities besides our projects which are to be done on the local level. Usually there are networks of regional energy agencies, municipalities, municipal utilities, and so on a very local level, with a lot of activities there. So there's not only not a transparency over the CVET programs in Germany, but also not a very good transparency over the activities in Germany. There are several approaches to deal with that, several websites where these projects can be enlisted, but still there's a bunch of activities on the local level, and what they have in common is that they have the idea: we have to do something, we have to support the process of the goal of reaching of achieving the goals, and at the same time to achieve and to hold a level of quality in the work to be done. So they they have the idea we have to ensure that the workers on the blue collar workers, the enterprises working in that field have to be qualified for the work to be done. So they work with, or at least in our region, Cologne, Bonn, they work with recommendation lists, and they want that enterprises go regularly, attend regularly CVET programs, and you only get onto that recommendation list if you prove you have sent your employees to such CVET programs. You show reference project where you successfully finished projects in the field of energy efficiency and renewable energies. So this is one activity not directly related to our project, but supporting the structure that that workers in companies in Germany have to be qualified more and more regularly in the process of work. Okay, I think that should suffice for the moment. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. Thank you very much.